So now, there's no microphone on the floor, but if people would like to raise their hand, I'll call on people, and we can have questions.
Yes, there is a microphone, and I'm passing it around.
And Sarah's going to pass it around. Sarah, can you, there's some folks over here, can you get them? And Bahman has an announcement to make also. Maybe while we're going now, do you want to make that announcement, or do you want to wait? Okay.
I just want to thank all of you. You were so illuminating and moving and setting the charge for all of us to go forward. And I want to say to what you just said, Joe, that we can totally make this transition if we look to take care of the planet. We could put everybody to work. I mean, when we geared up after for World War II, we changed all our industry, and we just started making tanks and guns and ships, you know, to fight the Nazis for whatever. We could be doing windmills and solar powers and, you know, efficiency, and we could have everybody working. So it's not, so your picture was a little bleak. I agree we have to change the whole system, but we have, the job is right in front of us where we could convince everybody. We have all the kids with us already that know this is where we have to go. So I hope we put that in our speaking when we talk about ending capitalism. What are we all going to be doing? You know, we're going to be fixing the planet.
I didn't mean to be not optimistic, because I am very optimistic that we're going to accomplish that. But is there anybody else like to comment on any of these? Just take the mic and do so if you do. Otherwise, we'll go and have more questions and discussion. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is AntiWar Nkrumah Toure. I'm an organizer with Black Alliance for Peace. Thank you. My question to the panelists, for the political work that you do, how do you explain these ideas to young people?
Well, I'll start. It's not easy, because not only was there a break in war for a whole generation, there was a break between the people that organized during my early years and the organization it's taking now. And people are under attack because the system is falling apart. And people are under attack everywhere, in their communities, in their jobs. The unions are under attack. Women's rights are under attack. And so it's easy for them to say, well, this is immediately what's in front of me and I have to do it. But it's our job to also to broaden that out, that these struggles are connected. We have the same enemy. And not just here, but internationally. There is no national movement that's taking place that doesn't have its international component and something's happening. When this stuff happened in Ferguson, the Palestinians sent them, here's how we dodge the tear gas that takes place. That was a tremendous international reaching across borders, and that's one of the things that we have to do. But it is something that we have to explain. I don't know if that gets you anywhere.
I'd like to take a step back, actually, and point out that right now, young people are being brought into organizing and social justice movements within a highly corrupt environment that has been co-opted by corporate money. The entire ecosystem of identity politics is sucking young people into a black hole of neoliberal imperialism disguised as pro-democracy movements. And so we need to rebuild movements and spaces for young people to really learn how to be activists, how to be grassroots fighters against imperialism. So I would, I'd like to say that before answering your question. And I think that the same way that we have to talk to adults, we have to empower people with the right tools to understand how US imperialism is taking place today. We have to empower people with a historic perspective of all these movements that are being accused of being dictatorships and totalitarian regimes. We have to educate people on how to tell the difference between a revolutionary economic model and a neoliberal model. We have to train people on how to follow the money trail. We have to train people to go beyond the headlines. We have to train people to go to the actual source of the information and to learn to read between the lines. Because if we don't do that, then we're wasting our time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm proud to say that Bayan USA is bulk of our membership are young people, and we're very proud members of UNAC. I think the question of imperialism is not a question of generations. It's a question of crisis and affected communities. And I think in our work here, the reason why we have been able to organize a lot of Filipino American youth in the US is because we consciously work to educate, expose, and oppose that our very existence here in the US is a product of US imperialist invasion of our country and colonialism. So when we expose that fact, many Filipino Americans who suffer from identity issues, not knowing, not feeling that they belong because of colonial amnesia. Here, that's in our education system and even in the Philippines, has erased that history and has never been explained to us. That's a starting point for many of our young people that come out of the schools. I think we also consciously encourage all of our membership, which are young people again, to integrate with the poor people in their communities. And many of them come from working class communities. They're working class themselves, but we consciously push those in the universities to integrate with the working class, to proletarianize, to be with the poor. And I think that type of exposure to the very crisis of imperialism motivates many of our young people to want to fight back and wins them over to the anti-imperialist struggle.
Well, to me, it's a very critical question at this stage. I was talking to our friend, the comrade Bill, outside, and I said, Bill, what happens if the old guards die today? Who is going to lead the movement from this point on? Because we are far behind in terms of getting the young people to get involved. And it's a statement of fact. My personal view, although it's a limited suggestion, is that we have to go to places where they are. And to me, one of the places is classes, educational system. We have relinquished that to the establishment. I think we should take those classes back through all of the progressive teachers, academics, and I'm speaking as a retired professor of sociology. And I give you a couple of examples because I've been teaching courses on imperialism. I've been teaching courses about socialism, designed them and taught them. Got away with it, but I did it. And I give you a couple of examples. I designed a course on 21st century socialism and took for the honors students, and took 6 of my students to Cuba during that course. Interesting example, thing that I would like to tell you is that on our way back in Havana airport, I saw one of the girls crying. I said, Michelle, why are you crying? She said, we're leaving Cuba. I don't want to go back there. True story. People have to see those places. Why don't we organize tours? Take them to those countries. Let them see where they are. I've been teaching courses on imperialism, and I give you one example. It was during the Occupy Wall Street time. I was teaching it in central New Jersey. And I showed them a film on imperialism. 3 of them that same night after class packed up and went to New York that same night on train to participate in Occupy Wall Street. But the jaws drops when you first introduce the subject. They don't know that. And this is the issue. We have to be able to find places or venues or connection link places, link up places, to really link up with the young people. We cannot just sit here in our own organizations and say we should do this, we should do that. we have to really take the steps to go to them, and it's the important part. Thank you.
We interrupt this program with breaking news. Breaking news. Now, sometimes we don't know our own power, or we forget it, or we lose sight of it for a hot moment. But there's been a campaign this past year organized by migrants demanding ICE off the buses, and particularly focusing on Greyhound across the country. And right here in New York at the Greyhound bus station over at Port Authority on 42nd Street, there have been demonstrations, and also at the George Washington Bridge, at the Greyhound bus station, at other places, demanding that Greyhound stop ICE agents from boarding buses and arresting migrants, demanding ID. And also educating people that you can get up and say, ICE has no right to get on this bus, and more people were doing it who aren't migrants, who would understand this and take a big step. And we made it very much part of the demonstration, part of this conference. If you look at the back of every journal that you got, you see that there's going to be a demonstration on Sunday at 4 o'clock, and we all planned to march out of here and over to Greyhound. Right? That's on your agenda. Guess what Greyhound announced tonight? Just now. This is breaking news. They just announced that they will no longer allow ICE agents to illegally board buses. Now, this is tremendous. This is tremendous. This is like, we don't get many victories like this, right? Now, we'll have to figure out what we do now on Sunday. Maybe we'll go over there and dance in front of Greyhound. And we'll have to ask the migrant activists who have been organizing this, who plan to come. This was the last session of the conference on Sunday, how they read it. It's organized by FIRE, that's Fight for Immigrants and Refugees Everywhere. At any rate, check out the back of your brochure and know that, as Frederick Douglass said so many years ago, without struggle, there is no progress. And so this is just an example of some immediate progress, and it's also just part of defending migrants all across this country. We say no to the camps and no to the cages, no to the raids and no to the roundups, and ICE off the buses.
All right.
Wait.
Larry Adams from POP, People's Organization for Progress. I want to congratulate the comrades on most informative, stimulating presentations. And I was real glad to see that they're all written, because a suggestion that I would make for outreach is to pamphlet them. Put those presentations together. Now, I'm old school. You see, I write notes with a pen. But the young people that we're trying to reach out to watch YouTube. So things like Fred's tape and other videos should probably be put together as an educational tool and put online where the young people go. I think that would be excellent task for the Coalition for Outreach. Because they're worth publicizing.
Hi, thanks. My name is Mitchell Cohen from WBAI Radio and also the Brooklyn Greens. So when we're talking about, these are great talks, when we're talking about how the issues link up, that I believe that's where the importance comes out, and it's not only intellectually trying to concatenate the issues, I'll let you be in my dream if I could be in yours, type of thing, but it's recognizing that Venezuela, for instance, is the only, one of the few countries in the world that bans the planting of genetically engineered crops, right? Nobody knows that. It's a total inroad to the environmental movement. And the way you combine movements is to show what imperialism does and why it's trying not only for the oil, but to plant huge tracts of genetically engineered crops on the behest of Monsanto and the other giant corporations. So then what do we do about it? You know, I would like to see more talk about, and there's been great talk here, about what type of direct actions we take. People are now, as you talk, is shutting down pipelines all over the place right now in New York and elsewhere, Canada, of course. How do we connect that with the other issues as well? I actually think they connect themselves, and we just have to just bring that out and just let people see that. So, but I really appreciate this, and I'd like to see more attention paid towards the type of direct action that we do in terms of rebuilding while we fight resistance. How do we rebuild the type of socialist or community that we want to see take over? The way the Black Panther Party built breakfast for children programs. So you're building what you want to see in the course of fighting around it. Thank you.
Sandra Decker from Portland, Oregon. In getting into the classroom to the kids, I was in California for quite a while in the Bay Area, and one man, just one man, set up tabling at the community colleges against enlisting in the military, and they counted that as pretty strong peace work. In Portland, one man, John Grushel, has set up tabling in the schools. He calls it equal access. When the military gets in the school, we get in the school. And at the same time, we're there with our buttons and our flyers and talking to the students. Additionally, John gets us into the classroom. So when I get back from this, I'll be going into 2 high school classrooms with another person and engaging the students. So they know that it's an 8-year commitment when they join the military, 4 years active, 4 years not inactive, but yeah, thank you, reserve. And that they know if they don't have an impeccable record, they aren't going to get that college scholarship. They know that the rape rate in the military for both men and women is much higher than it is in the general public. And we have flyers with facts on it, so they can look it up. I mean, these are facts that we're talking about. So, I mean, that one person in California, one person in Portland could get this set up. It's not that hard to do. And it's good to have younger people there, but in Portland, we got the Portland Raging Grannies going. And so they're into the classrooms and putting in a lot of hours. So thank you, Professor, for being in the classroom, and we can be there too.
Sorry, just to let you know that at the end of the conference on Sunday, we will have a plenary where we talk about an action program, what we could do, what kind of actions we can do going forward. And I hope you can be here for that, and I hope we can come up with a good program, which a lot of us have been thinking about to go into the future.
Can I answer that?
Yes. Yeah.
And also, I had forgotten that, but one very direct action you can do right now to help us oppose sanctions against Nicaragua is to go to afgj.org, and you will find a petition to end sanctions against Nicaragua. Alliance for Global Justice website, afgj.org. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Margaret, and then we'll go around.
I have a question for each of you because each of you have been involved in anti-imperialist work for a while and in other countries and have familiarity with other countries' movements. What do you see when you look at the United States as what are some of the serious deficiencies here or features of other movements that you've seen that have made them be more successful? You kind of started to answer some of these questions, but what is really lacking here that we should be focused on organizing?
I don't think the answer to that is simple, but I'll contribute towards a bigger answer. I think definitely we have to resolve issues of class and race and gender and age within the anti-war movement to be that's more equitable. We have to also organize amongst the working class and aspire for anti-imperialist movement that's really working class led. I think we can do more as an anti-imperialist movement, as the Anti-Imperialist United Front, to ensure that.
I think so many of institutions in the United States have been co-opted by money, right? Whether you're looking at public education or the healthcare system, or even social justice organizing, they have been co-opted by big money. So we need to take back our institutions, we need to educate and create awareness, and we need to find alternative spaces and funding sources to do our work. We can no longer continue to rely on organizations that draw their money from the very corporations that are causing the problem in the first place. And that's one of the main differences that I would point out between grassroots movements in Nicaragua. And I'm not talking about the ones funded by USAID or NED or any of them. But I'm talking about campesino movements, I'm talking about worker movements that don't draw their money from the United States. So I think that rebuilding our grassroots operation, it's a must. And I think that we need to create our own alternatives for educating, creating news, and then having this very type of discussions. I'm not anti-direct action. I think there's a time and place for direct action, but I think the work is in education and awareness and like my comrades here have said, meeting people exactly where they are, going to the places where they are, going to the schools, going to the community college and talking, having face-to-face conversations with people. And then also one more thing, I think it's really important also to make connections between what's going on in Latin America and other parts of the world and what's happening here. The flooding of African American neighborhoods with drugs being directly connected to the killing of Nicaraguans by the Contras and the atrocities that they committed. We need to highlight those similarities. We need to build solidarity from a personal place, from a personal place not only of suffering but also of shared struggle. And I think that we're failing to do that. I think that we're looking at these movements, these revolutionary movements and governments as like faraway occurrences when they're actually intimately connected to our struggles right here. And I think that we need to make those connections.
I would like to add a couple of dimensions to this. So one observation, I was born in Iran, I was raised in Iran, I just came to the United States for my college education. One thing that probably people don't know here, in such countries that are under the thumbs of US imperialism and foreign powers, the culture, the society, the political situation, the economic situation creates anti-imperialists by itself. It generates resistance forces. So you didn't have to read books or look at certain videos or films to become anti-Shah, anti-US. You were there already as you were growing. Unfortunately, we do not have that privilege here. It's the opposite. We are sailing against the wind, right? So we have to do an extra work of educating people, and I think that's the key element here. And one of the aspects of the education that I think is important, because we have been fighting on all fronts, all of us, in many ways, environment, civil rights, economics, wars, everything. But one thing that brings all of those together, as it was mentioned that we need a link. The link to all of those is imperialism. if you look at the root causes of every one of them, you end up with the question of imperialist domination of the world, imperialist exploitation. And this is what's causing all of these problems. These are not independent problems. These are symptoms of the same problem. And this is the issue that we have to explain to the public. That unless you pull that link, you cannot change the situation. People fight for the environment, and then additional regulations leads companies to fire workers because their expenses go up. Now they set workers against environmentalists, right? McDonald's workers raise the minimum wage to $15. Immediately, all McDonald's automate their ordering system. You have seen this. They can just flip the issue. You raise the wages, and it immediately reflects in the price of commodities. So unless we grab the whole situation at once and deal with the system that does this, not with its symptoms alone. No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is that we need that unified anti-imperialist front that deals with all of these as one and the same problem and addresses the core problem of it, which is imperialism itself and capitalism. And we have to do a huge educational work on this. Otherwise, calling to action without people knowing what they're getting into or what they're fighting against will not get us very far. That's what I'm trying to say.
I agree with what everybody said. I agree with what everybody. Can I just answer? Because I agree with what everybody said. It's difficult, you know. When we were in Venezuela, at one point, we were not able to leave Venezuela because the U.S. planes that fly to Venezuela would not fly. And the reason they wouldn't fly was because they said there was chaos in the streets. There was an artificial blackout that the U.S. engineered. But what was interesting was the people were not rioting or looting when that happened. One block, actually, everybody got together on the street and had a party. But they organized themselves to get water because the water pumps wouldn't work, and to make sure that the people in some of the high-rise buildings, these high-rise buildings, by the way, the government has made with names like Malcolm X and Che Guevara for people that don't have homes. They've provided homes for many of them. But they brought people up, and they had a sense of community. We walked through the streets and didn't see any of this stuff. And so the narrative that the American people were getting was that there was chaos in the streets of Venezuela. And there was no chaos in the streets of Venezuela. So we actually got together and made a video where each of us spoke and tried to get it out through social media. But it is very difficult. We can use social media, but my social media account has been blocked many times when I say the truth. And the corporate media, you know, has a monopoly. And the educational structures, yes, we can say something in the classrooms, but they're not going to tell you the truth overall. It's just a little glimpse of light that people get, and that's important, very important. It's just a little glimpse of light. So organizing is a really important part of this whole thing. And I've discovered that I learn more organizing and in action than I do in most classes. I think it might be my problem because I'm a little bit ADHD and stuff, and I have a hard time listening sometimes. But we have to have an activist movement. We have to be out in the streets where when they say there is no opposition or there's nothing, people will see that there is an opposition. We have to build an infrastructure throughout the country so that when something happens, like when Trump sent that drone and killed the person, Soleimani in Iraq. I mean, everything was wrong with that. Everything. There's no right to kill anybody in Iraq. He has no right to kill Soleimani. He has no right to do any of the things. But people got it all of a sudden. And we called for actions. And you know, actions took place in 200 cities. That was bigger than we've had for a while. So they got it. When you're doing the thing we have, which they don't have, is what they do is against the interest of the vast majority of people. And all their lies and all their cover-ups, which they do very, very well, when you get through to that, we have the potential of organizing those people in a way that can really stop the government. So education, all this kind of stuff is very, very important, and all the outreach we do. But we also have to be an activist movement. If someone's just sitting home and signing a petition, they think they're the only one on the petition. If they're calling their senator, they think they're the only one doing it because the media tells them you're not like everyone else. But it's not true. The polls show that the majority of people in this country are against war. Our job is to get to them, is to mobilize them, to talk to them, to tell them the tactics and strategies, work with them to understand and learn the tactics and strategies that can build a movement. And we'll find education. And whenever there has been a mass movement in our country in the past, it had all sorts of implications. There was theater and cultural and poetry and songs that came out. And these are educational ways too. It's not just through lecturing. So anyway, thanks. More discussion. All right. I see a man here and a woman there. So can we? Okay, so let's do this woman and then this man, and then we'll get a couple more. We have about a little bit more than a half an hour, and then we're going to have some really good music. And so I hope having all this discussion period works and is good.
Hello. Hi, my name's Janine Solanki. I'm from Vancouver, Canada with Mobilization Against War and Occupation, and I'm very excited to be part of this conference this weekend. And with all of you working on so many different important struggles and bringing them all here together. As what has been discussed, you know, how do we build a united, strong, effective anti-war movement? And as has been brought up in various points, is that needs to be international. And that's why, as someone coming from Canada, I'm here. That's why our organization is part of UNAC. And, you know, the governments of Canada, of the United States, of all of these imperialist countries, they are working together. They are fighting these wars against our brothers and sisters around the world together. And that's what we need to be doing, is working together to combat that. So more international solidarity, cooperation, coordination between different groups and organizations is really, I think, what we need to see. On another point about getting youth involved, of course, this is the crucial question of our movement, and so many great avenues and ideas have been said. But I think one thing that is part of the theme of this conference is the environmental movement. And we're living in a very unique and important time when the environmental movement is a large part of that being led by youth. But it's up to us to make that bridge and make that connection between environmental issues and anti-war and anti-imperialist issues. The military is one of the biggest polluters in the world. The environmental degradation is built on a system that is going for profit rather than human needs and environmental issues. So it's up to us to also make that bridge. So I look forward to the rest of the conference with everyone here.
Okay, we're going to have one more speaker, the man over here who raised his hand, and then we're going to see if anybody wants to sum up, and then we're going to go to music.
Red hat, right in front of you. I'm red.
Okay, come right.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Peace for all. Thank you very much for UNAC and the panel at this moment from Omid, a teacher, young actress, and the guy who remind me the struggle in Nicaragua. Thank you very much. I'm here to share with my feeling. I'm a Secretary General of Pakistan USA Freedom Forum. We are not a big like you, but we know how to respect all of you, your struggle, and you work for peace. And you create this atmosphere, the person like me, who can learn something from you to be a good person in this coming society and in this society. One thing I feel in my whole life in Pakistan and over here, when any activist afraid to listen critics, afraid to listen what he's doing, and somebody want to say to him that you make mistake or you are not up to the standard, that's the end of every struggle. I hope this UNAC conference will talk about this thing as an adult, that why we are at this moment in this condition, and why continuously powerful people who has a weapon of mass destruction, not to kill you, but to kill your future, your brain, your thoughts. I'm blaming, sorry teacher, in this country, education system has failed to make you, to create you as a human. They can create you as a good, successful person, but not the human. I'm sorry to tell you, this is a sign of thing. I give you one example, our activism. We are just like this society, United States society. Anything which is good to sell, we join them. Like a Palestinian problem, like a Cuba problem. But I will ask you, how many people feel any feeling when there's a 200,000 people since 1947 killed in Kashmir by the Indian Army? Feel, touch your heart. Touch your heart how you know this thing, how you feel about that thing. Because it was not popular. Now that 8 million people is in house arrest since 2019, for 5th of August. Curfew, nothing. They are not a 21st century human treated by allies of United States, Mr. Modi, extremist group. I'm going to ask you, please add something in this conference. Teach us that what we have to do. Then the Modi government, who's extremist Hindu with an atomic bomb power, and the region which has 3 atomic countries, Pakistan, China. And I think that region needs your attention, sir, because that's the future plan of this capital society. One thing is very clear, Joe Lombardo, we're thankful for you, thankful for Sarah Flanders, thankful to these kind of people, Mejia Benjamin, but we need more people. That's why they are not united. What kind of personality conflicts? What they want to do in the 60s, age of 60s or 70s. What they're going to get more. Let's talk openly, find out the reason, because the future in your hand of my kids. Thank you very much, UNAC. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everybody. And thank all of you.
Thank you, Comrade. There's one other guy who had his hand up for a long time, and it's been brought to my attention, so if we can just listen to him, and then we'll move on.
Hi, I'm John Catalanato. I'm one of the editors of Workers' World newspaper. I wanted to thank the speakers for setting a strong anti-imperialist framework for the anti-war movement that we're trying to develop now. And I especially want to thank the speakers who brought up military resistance, because that's one of my favorite topics. And Joe spent a lot of time talking about the Vietnam situation, Berna, about even the resistance in 1899 in the Philippines. There were black U.S. soldiers who joined the movement of the Filipinos to fight for national independence against the U.S. And Camilo, of course, personifies military resistance. And I'm interested in it, and I also wrote a book about it, and I want to make a little advertisement for it, because if any of you want to find out about the stuff Joe was talking about in more detail, about the military resistance during the Vietnam War and about the role of military resistance in general, I think it's worthwhile. And here's, for those of you who still get information through books, it would be a worthwhile way of finding it out, because it also shows the relationship between military resistance and the possibility of smashing the capitalist state, which in the end is what we're going to have to do if we're going to bring about a movement that really ends war. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any final remarks anybody wants to make on the panel? Go on.
Yes, I wanted to take this moment to announce, not for those of you who don't know, as a continuation of the same discussion that we are having tonight, I wanted to announce to you that a joint effort by Coalition Against U.S. Foreign Military Bases and the World Peace Council is going on, and we are organizing a conference against imperialism. That is a shift from our anti-bases conferences into the main core issue of imperialism. This conference is going to be held in Cyprus from March 27th to 29th. We have at least 4, 5, 6 of the leaders of UNAC speaking, actually. Joe Lombardo, Ajay Mubaraka, Kevin Zees, Margaret Flowers, Sarah Flounders. I hope I haven't missed anybody. But it's a very important, unprecedented event because we are bringing forces from around the world. We're going to be discussing sanctions. We're going to be discussing war. We're going to be discussing nuclear weapons. We're going to be discussing the environment. So all of it is going to be covered, and then we're going to be discussing every continent separately on a panel. What is imperialism doing to that continent? So I want to encourage all of you to consider traveling to Cyprus. Get your tickets if it's, early enough. It's not going to be that expensive. The website for the conference where you can get all the information is cyprus-conference.org. Very simple, you can't forget it. Please take a look at it, and I really encourage you to join this conference. It's unprecedented. We want to create a global anti-imperialist front, and this is the purpose of this conference. So, culmination of our efforts from Hands of Syria Coalition all the way to the present. It has been a joint effort of all of us, all of the organizations, and especially UNAC and the U.S. Peace Council. So I really encourage you to join us in that. Thank you.
Anybody else have the last comments?
I'll just briefly thank again the organizers of this conference for inviting us to participate. I'm very honored to be speaking with these comrades next to me. A lot has been said about the need for increasing and strengthening our international solidarity work. I couldn't agree more, coming from a third world country that's a neo-colony of the US. But I think as much as we study imperialism and know it and know its internal character, we also have to study the reality of rising revolutions all over the world. And to do that, this is not information you will see coming from schools. This is not taught in any textbook, in any curriculum under the neoliberal system. It's not ever going to be shared with you in the news. It'll always be branded as a terrorist organization, these struggles for national liberation. How we practice people-to-people solidarity on a global scale needs to be intentional, concrete, and tangible. Meaning to say, go to the areas. You know, the US is the richest country in the world. Go to the areas where the people are facing the brunt of US imperialism, where the plunder is happening, where the wars are happening, where the militarism is happening. We need to go there and express solidarity with the people suffering over there and study how they resist. And maybe we can learn something of how we can resist here and sharpen our movement here. I think we need to build a movement that really investigates and doesn't make assumptions about what's happening, how we conduct our struggles overseas. A lot of this assumption is actually what divides us. And we are also naive to the fact that imperialism itself is built on an offensive of ideas that they attack us with to make us believe that our resistance is small and ineffective when in fact we outnumber. We actually, globally, resistance outnumbers the enemy, no? So I think we need to come to really close the gap of information, really resist the pacification of our ideas, our militancy coming from imperialism, and really work to build these tangible, multilateral formations where we can actually come together and meet each other face to face and shake hands. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here tonight, and I really meant it when I said that this is really wonderful to be here with all of you and to have the opportunity to have these conversations. And I'd also like to make a shameless plug for tomorrow's Regime Change Workshop, which is going to feature a speaker from Nicaragua, a good friend of mine, who will be talking about the popular economy that we have there and the role of women in peasant farms and how our food sovereignty has really worked as a sort of bulletproof vest against sanctions, because they can hurt us, but they can't kill us because we're able to feed our people. So that's a very radical thing, very amazing achievement of the revolution that I think that we should be doing right here, that we should be able to grow our own food and go from farm to the table. And it's just like one of the many things that you can learn about. Look at the program and think of the things that you're not very aware of, that you're not very knowledgeable on, and go to those workshops, because we really need to up our game and we really need to be educating other people. So let's do it. Thank you.
So we're going to have some music, and while the musician sets up, and I'm going to turn this mic over for a minute to Kevin, who's going to introduce her, Kevin Zeese, who is also her uncle. And so while she's setting up, there'll be some music, but we hope you'll stick around, listen to the music, and talk to each other, get to know each other. It's a little bit of a social period before we end, and the rest of the conference is going to be very important. Some of the issues that we talked about here on sanctions, there'll be a panel. Black Alliance for Peace is going to lead a panel on the elections and the movement and how we relate to the elections. There's going to be a panel on defending our movement, talking about the people who were in the embassy, talking about Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and the other people who have stood up. And our movement is under attack more than it has been in a while. And we have to come together. That's an elementary duty of all of us, is to defend each other when we are under attack. So I hope you'll be here and for all the workshops on a number of issues for the rest of the conference, and join us, and thank you for being here tonight. And I hope you'll stay and listen to Aya speak, and Kevin's going to introduce her.
Hey. Well, first off, thank you all for being here, and for those who, almost everyone has supported the Embassy Protection Collective in some way. We really appreciate your support. There's 4 of us, who are facing charges, but we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with the movement behind us, and we really want to appreciate everybody for helping that happen. We've done tours all over the country, and we really appreciate it. So let me introduce our performer. Let's move this out of the way, and so she's ready. One thing about New York is there's a lot of talented people doing great art. And tonight we're going to be very lucky to hear from a singer-songwriter who you'll get to hear that part of her art tonight. She's also a playwright and an actor, an incredibly talented person. I'm not just saying that because she's my niece, but she is incredibly talented. And you're going to be, I think you'll really enjoy it. Those are very interesting shoes, Aya. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aya Aziz.